Happy Halloween. Welcome to Scream Spectrum. Scream was released in 1996 and is directed by Wes Craven. It stars Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott and Roger Jackson as the voice of the mysterious Ghostface. Scream tells the story of one young woman's trauma as a mysterious slasher terrorizes her town with his gruesome love of scary movies. So, I wanted to review this movie for two reasons. One, it is one of my all-time favorite movies to watch during October and the Halloween season and has been a sleepover staple of mine for a long time. And two, I am constantly hearing people say how much it does not hold up in modern day. The satire is old, the technology is hilariously outdated, and it's just too dependent on the norms of 90s culture. And while there is some definite merit to these statements, I would argue that there's a lot that can carry over into 2019. So let's begin this October Screen Spectrum review and get right into story. Our story opens with our first victim as we are introduced to our killer's deadly game of movie trivia and oh so sleazy phone voice. News of the slaughter reaches Woodsboro High the next day, where our lead Sydney can't help being reminded of her mother's grisly death years before. Unfortunately for Sid, a relentless tabloid reporter who covered her mother's death years ago has returned to cash in on the excitement. As the town of Woodsboro is swept up in the mystery, Sydney soon receives her own chilling phone call and knows the killer could be any one of her peers. As bodies pile up and high school turns hellish, one thing is certain. This killer has a love of scary movies. The one way to get out alive? Play along and know the horror movie rules of survival. So basically this is a setup of a basic teen scream slasher with a bit of a mystery. And not only does this mystery set up a love letter to old horror movie tropes, but it also has a little bit something to say about the nature of trauma and our relationship to the media. And before I go any further, I just want to point out that yes, this is absolutely an unapologetic, silly teen slasher movie. It is also a satire. And yes, a lot of the tropes being pointed out are ones that horror has moved on from long ago. But for a film so rooted in the culture of a bygone era, the themes and questions at its core are surprisingly current. Is our relationship to media, particularly violent and sensationalized media, partly to blame for acts of violence? Following Sydney's experiences through these events, along with her interactions with reporter Gail Weathers as she chases blood like a shark, even provide a window into the effects this relationship with media has on survivors. This story has a lot of deaths play out that are very easy to laugh at. And you might even say that the reactions that us, the audience, has to these deaths are a lot like the reactions that Sydney's peers have. Throughout the story, you get a lot of the town of Woodsboro moving on from these events with a sense of apathy or even excitement at the sensational events that are happening, even laughing it off at times. But the story always goes back to Sydney and how she's affected by these events and events that happened in her past. The result is a story that weirdly puts the audience right inside the movie with Sydney, alongside her as she struggles to make sense of the violence and control her own narrative. And while this is happening and the mystery's playing out, you'll have fun trying to guess when the killer's gonna pop up next. You're gonna enjoy picking apart some of these older movie cliches and being in on the joke with these characters, and also enjoy it when the movie decides to reel it back in for a bit of surprising depth. All in all, not a bad ride for a silly little slasher movie. Alright, moving right along into characters. Every scary movie needs bodies. So it goes without saying that a lot of the characters in this movie are just fodder. Luckily though, our movie's focal point are characters that fit really nicely into a movie that's clearly meant to reflect audience attitudes towards scary movie cliches. So of course you can't help but relate. In a movie that's meant to satirize the genre, Neve Campbell gives a very down-to-earth portrayal of someone who is truly affected by the events throughout the film. But this film's really wise for letting this be an avenue for comedy as well. There's this one really great scene where Sydney is getting a phone call from the Ghostface killer who's saying the typical, I can see you, being creepy, whatever. And she is not down to play this game, and she goes out onto the porch and starts picking her nose and going like, oh yeah, if you can see me, what am I doing? What am I doing? Scenes like that make her so easy to root for because she is a member of the cynical audience. I love that this lead character is smart and she's in on the joke. The character Sydney's friend Randy serves this purpose as well, being the audience mouthpiece that occasionally educates other characters about the set horror movie tropes and rules. I thought this was so smart because you do need to talk to the audience a bit in a movie like this. And making him a film buff makes his unprompted, sweaty rants just so much more believable. Side characters like Gale Weathers and Dewey serve a more comedic role. They are stereotypes we've seen before, the relentless reporter and useless horror movie cop. But although they're mostly there to break up tension and provide some levity throughout the film, by the end, you'll find that surprisingly you know a little bit more about these characters. Things that make them feel a little bit more rounded than just simple stock side characters. Things like their insecurities or their deeper intentions. These are some characters that you can actually relate to and root for. These characters actually do a really great job of balancing out the movie and keeping the energy up throughout the whole film. But with Sydney bringing the realism and providing a grounding focal point for the film, along with a cast of very likable side characters and some killer performances, I think most people will find that you can stay very invested in these guys all the way through. And with that, we are into our last point, tone. We've all seen so many scary movies where the characters make choices just so stupid that all investment is just shot. Like, the tension is gone. You know, that if you were in that same situation, you would have noped out ages before, and it's just harder to relate, and therefore harder to be scared. This is why I think the comedy and satire of Scream still holds up today and still makes it a very smart movie. Because it's through this satire that real tension is built. The whole way through this movie, the audience is in on the joke. We're following characters that are just as savvy as any audience member, just as cynical and sometimes apathetic, so it's easy to see yourself in the movie, making similar choices to these characters that eventually get killed off. For a movie that's essentially poking fun at slasher movies, it builds up a great sense of atmosphere through things like sound design and special effects, and it sells what could really be otherwise really cheesy moments. That opening scene with our first victim, played by Drew Barrymore, is still so tense. So much atmosphere is built up in that first scene, and it makes it very clear that they understand the genre that they're satirizing. And that's not to say that there isn't a definite hokiness on display, but Scream makes it very clear when we are supposed to be disturbed and when we're supposed to be just having good, clean, corn syrupy fun. Scream definitely has meta humor at its backbone, but it avoids becoming an outright spoof or takedown movie, which I think works to its advantage and helps it hold up today. And look, meta humor is very in right now. I don't think it's going anywhere. It'll always be there as long as new genres keep becoming popular, and get oversaturated, and eventually get picked apart by video essayists. But by choosing to have a grounded story at the forefront, complete with drama, top-notch performances, and some great uses of atmosphere, this biting critique makes for a delicious mix of satire and legitimate tension. So given all that, where do I think 1992's Scream holds up on the Scream spectrum? So obviously I really love this movie. I was even one of those people that did say that watching Scream nowadays was hilarious with all their, the plot points revolving around cell phones and just the really old horror movies that they were satirizing and poking fun at. In that sense, it is dated, but I just kept coming back to it, and I had to ask myself, why am I still able to enjoy this movie nowadays and still get some genuine laughs out of it? Along with feel genuine tension. Like, I'm not covering my eyes at this movie in any way, but that opening scene is still sends a tingle up my spine. And I really do think it's because this, this meta humor and the need to deconstruct certain genres, it's always going to be a thing. As long as we keep having a relationship to the media. And really at its core, I think that that's what Scream does best. It just goes to show that we do have a relationship with scary movies. And horror is a genre that's very of its time. Things that inspired horror in the 50s are going to be different than things that inspired horror in the 70s. So as long as the horror genre keeps reflecting anxieties and fears of our time, and as long as we keep having a relationship to scary movies, I think Scream is timeless. And at the end, if that doesn't do it for you, you can always laugh at the fact that a girl is killed in a garage door. Perfect movie for atmosphere, perfect movie for referencing older classics like Halloween, perfect movie for a chilly October night. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this October Screen Spectrum review. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.